Hello and welcome. It's David Widmar joining you after a long break. Of course, uh, we've been busy around AEI with the holidays, with the third season of the podcast, Nothing Borrowed, Nothing Gained. And we took a little bit of a hiatus on this venture, but it's a new year and we're back in the saddle. And we're looking forward to talking about the latest ideas that we're thinking about and giving a little bit of a behind the scenes, behind the articles sort of look at what's going on. So it's January 13th as I'm recording this, and we just had the USDA WASDE report come out. And I want to talk a little bit about that. Also, want to talk about the acreage debate and that pending acreage debate that we'll see play out. So, the first thing, of course, is that WASDE report. And, I think the biggest jump that came out of this is a 1.6 million acre revision on corn acreage. Now, it's really important to spend some time thinking about what will happen here. 88.6 million acres of corn planted. That is unchanged from December. The change came in area harvested, and they went from 80.8 to 79.2. That's that 1.6 million acre reduction. And one of the things that we try to remind folks of, and we'll take a better look at this as we follow up, is there's more than just yields that can impact production, right? There's prevent plant. That's another source of Mother Nature influencing the production cycle. And there's also area harvested. And area harvested for corn, there's always a pretty big gap there between planted and harvested because of the silage equation. It's much tighter, for example, on soybeans. Almost a perfect relationship for soybeans. But this year it dropped out. Why some of these acres didn't get harvested? Because of the drought, and especially at least in the echo chamber that I speak to, the western parts of the Great Plains, Nebraska, Kansas, lots of unharvested acres out there. But of course, maybe producers in other parts of the area that just didn't have favorable yields might have taken that crop not for grain, but maybe for feed or for silage. So that was a big adjustment. Now, of course, when those bad yields aren't harvested, it goes to reason that it takes some of the downward pressure off yields. So the USDA also bumped corn yields 1 bushel, so 173.3 up 1 bushel from back in December. Still, below the trend line, pretty significantly below the trend line. Given our starting point was around 181 bushel per acre, as we've talked about. So how does this net out? Well, 13.9 billion bushels of production compared 13.2 billion bushels of production. When we look through the use category, we also saw the USDA trimmed out about 150 million. They trimmed out some of the usage as well. 150 million of that came out of less exports. We also saw a little less coming out of that feed and residual category. So what we have here is a stock situation that is unchanged from December's. Well, let's scratch our head a little bit. Well, the headline might be 1.6 fewer million acres harvested, but we bumped the yield and we dropped the usage just a little bit. And that over 185 million bushels. And so that net there were ending stocks that were tighter. We had tighter ending stocks, but less usage. So that gave our stocks to use ratio still at 8.9%. Again, stocks to use ratio isn't a perfect metric, right? We actually have fewer bushels in the bin than we had a month ago, or that we thought we had a month ago, but the stocks use didn't capture that. Again, to reemphasize this, why is because we dropped total usage, and so that denominator change and that pulled that out. So again, the corn situation is still tight. How tight is it? Well, it's among the historic lows. So we saw that 8.3% was what we got to 2 years ago, 9.2% is we were last year. Sitting at 13% is that long run average. So again, historically tight, historically significant, and it's going to weigh on the markets going into 2023 production. Now, let's shift gears and let's talk about soybeans. Soybeans got a little bit tighter. What do we see happen here? Well, we saw the USDA drop that soybean yield. It fell to 49.5 bushel per acre. It also trimmed, so the USDA in net trimmed. They did pull out a few of that harvested acres, as we talked about before, not nearly as much as soybeans, and they pulled out. Total production came down lower. Now, they also adjusted usage as well. So when we come down here to the bottom, we see total usage is a little bit lower. Where did that come out of? Well, we see a little bit coming out of exports. Instead of 2.045 billion bushels of export, we're at 1.99 billion bushels of export. So a little bit sluggish on the export side, and we'll just have to keep an eye on that. So what we have here is fewer ending stocks, 210 million bushels versus 220 million bushels a month ago. But then again, of course, we have smaller usage. So the stocks use here did fall to 4.8%. We are 4.5% for some context back in September, but 2 years ago we were 5.7%, 6.1% last year. The long run average is 8.2. Soybeans are pretty darn tight, and we've seen this play out with this soybean corn price ratio for the new crop. We were talking about this back in November or October, and that ratio was really low, which favors corn acres a lot. In fact, it was kind of surprisingly low there for a while. Now it's starting to return to neutral, and this report's going to probably continue to influence this ratio as we head through. Of course, we got to navigate that South American crop. How many soybeans get raised in South America, and how does that impact the overall production system heading into the U.S. for the 2023 outlook? Now, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. Of course, we're talking about the crop that we just harvested, and the acreage debate is just around the corner. And this is an issue that's near and dear for those of you in the Forecast Network Challenge and answering those questions. U.S. winter wheat acreage, also that came out this week. The report that was easier to overlook is the USDA's first estimate of winter wheat acres. Now, winter wheat accounts for a majority of U.S. wheat production, and winter wheat acres came in at, when we rounded, it was 39.95 million acres, so 36.95 million acres. So rounded, it came to 37 million acres. We haven't been to 37 million acres since before 2014. So the biggest winter wheat crop planted in recent memory, and significantly higher than the 30 million acres that we planted just 3 or 4 seasons ago. So a big uptick. Of course, the Ag Forecast Network question had a line there, a line at 35 million. The probability of that threshold of 35 million being exceeded, the consensus was at 59% ahead of the report. Big range of forecasts ahead of that. So check out your score, see how you did. These big wheat acreage changes, this was a big one, 10% more winter wheat acres. That is a big one, but not historically out of the range of what we've seen. There have been big wheat changes over time. Now, it wasn't that long ago that a 37 million acre crop would have been among the smaller ones. As you can see, between 2000 and really 2015, we only dipped below a 40 million acre crop once, and that was significant to the market. And so what was a big crop today was a small crop in recent memory. And this is kind of the tale of winter wheat and how all that's been challenging for the wheat, this long decline in winter wheat. And we happen to see a blip up. We'll see how this plays out over the next several years. But going into 2023, more winter wheat planted. I think the question mark here that really think about and pause and keep in your mind is, you might be listening to this and maybe you're in Indiana or Iowa or Illinois and say, I'm not raising a lot of wheat, or maybe my neighbors or my customers aren't raising a lot of wheat. That's not, this topic really isn't that relevant to me. But what is relevant is that increase in winter wheat acres is going to impact what's available for planting for corn and soybeans in the spring. And if these winter wheat acres came out of the extreme western parts of the Great Plains, where their alternative was dryland corn, there are probably going to be fewer corn acres as a result of that. Now, the other side, and maybe the biggest unknown, or not the biggest unknown, but a very big unknown, and kind of this wrench that got thrown into the 2023 production season, is double crop. Of course, the RMA changed some of the rules around double cropping, expanded what parts of the country could plant soybeans following that wheat crop. So I guess in other parts, maybe the southern parts of the Corn Belt or the western edge of the Corn Belt, these producers might have saying, hey, I was going to plant this field to soybeans. I might as well plant it to wheat ahead of time, and I can get this soybean crop insured as a double crop. So this is to say that there is going to be an impact on the corn and soybean acreage. How many acres are available to go into corn and soybeans? Historically, we would have thought this was a pretty big, trade-off there. Now, for 2023, this double crop situation could offset some of that. So In general, it's probably going to result in a situation where we don't see a whole lot of new additional corn and combined soybean acres. It's hard to imagine the corn and soybean acreage factory expanding in light of this large expansion, this more than 3 million acre expansion here that took place in the winter wheat side. Some of it will be double crops. There will be some soybeans that probably come out of this. We'll wait to see how much, but all of this is, in play and a big question mark as we head into the 2023. I guess the other way of looking at this is you were to expect corn and soybean acres to expand a lot in 2023. So big increases in both of those crops, we would have had to have seen a decrease in winter wheat acres to really make that play out. And we did not see that, and that's not the case. Well, thanks so much for joining me this week. Look forward to getting back in the routine of this. As always, don't hesitate to reach out with ideas, feedback, or comment on the contents that we're putting in. As always, make sure you drop in your forecast, stay connected with the Ag Forecast Network tool, and stay up to date on the latest articles. Until next time, stay curious.